So let's start with the context for this interview between Jon Stewart and Nathan Dahm. Nathan Dahm is the senator of Oklahoma State in United States, and Jon Stewart is a popular TV show host and a political satirist. And the senator of Oklahoma State uh, basically filed the following Second Amendment bills, 21, 22, and 23, as you can see. And the first one makes it so that the feds have to notify sheriffs when they do anything related to gun confiscation or gun regulations for the federal laws regarding guns. The second one makes it so that the state can authorize disapproval of federal regulations, and so it's making it so that Oklahoma has less gun regulations applied. And the third one prohibits federal officers from actually confiscating guns in Oklahoma. And so this is the context that they're talking about. Let's get started.
The Second Amendment. I believe the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the one right that's listed in the Constitution that uses that very specific affirmative language, shall not be infringed.
It's also the one right that uses the phrase well-regulated.
Correct, when it's talking about the militia and the state.
By the way, just for clarity's sake,
yeah.
I'm not against the Second Amendment. I'm not against, I don't want to ban guns. But you're saying more guns makes us more safe.
Yes.
So when we got 400 million guns in the country, we had an increase and gun deaths went up. So when exactly does this curve hit?
As you can see, I've pulled out the chart, and as the access to guns increases, there's an increase in guns, the gun deaths are shown to be increasing, and the curve is going upwards. So it's a valid question based on facts. And you can see another data visualization from the CDC of the year 2020, which is almost 45K deaths. And in 2021, they projected that it would be around 50,000 deaths. So that question is in fact based on facts.
That takes it down. Would 1 billion guns do it?
Let's just run those numbers, 400 million, 50,000. You're talking about less than a fraction of not even a percent, of 100th of a percent.
But it goes up, not down. So your argument is backwards.
Correct. That answer, first of all, didn't even address the main question over here, which was, about when the curve will actually go down. Kind of actually downplayed the amount of deaths by comparing it to the amount of guns. And he perfectly called out that the argument is backwards over here. So let's see what goes on.
But if you want, okay, so let's come up with a solution. Okay, so.
All right, he did not admit to his mistake and deflected to a new topic altogether, but let's see what he has to say.
One of the issues, a contributing factor, again, I believe it's the individual that is the problem.
So your solution to that is give them more guns.
So I'm saying that because people are the problem, we need to look at the problems that those people are facing and how do we address it.
But you've removed the ability for the state to do that.
No, because you're...
If you don't have background checks and you don't have registration and permitting, how do you know who has a problem in terms of the people who you're giving a gun to?
Do you want to talk about the background checks first, or do you want to talk about solutions first?
So Jon is staying on the topic and addressing the exact thing that Nathan came up with, which is that the individual is the problem. But now he does not address the question whatsoever and tries to change the topic by claiming that background checks are not part of the solution.
I want to talk about what you're doing is you're bringing chaos to order.
That's your subjective opinion, that it's bringing chaos to order.
It's not my subjective opinion. We have 50,000 gun-related deaths. That's not a subjective opinion.
Okay, so
that's dead people.
That's kind of an appeal to emotions, because it does not address how exactly people dying implies chaos, because he's assuming that Nathan actually cares about them, right? Like, he might not believe that these deaths bring chaos. You can't appeal to someone's emotion who doesn't care about gun deaths, right? Like saying to someone that it's dead people, it's like it's not gonna matter to them if he doesn't care about them. But he does change his approach right after this, which is pretty effective.
Let me back up for a second. In every other place in your life, you want to bring order, but guns are the outlier for you. So let's start with immigration. You want registration, maybe a wall, maybe not a wall. Why do you want that?
Well, one of the reasons is because the fentanyl crisis.
Just a little fact check. Most of the resources that I've researched on say that there is no link between immigration and fentanyl crisis.
Right.
I mean, okay, but...
You don't know when it's coming across. So what do you do?
But the fentanyl crisis is twice what the gun death crisis is.
Okay, so until the gun crisis gets to the fentanyl level,
not until it.
You don't want to bring order.
No, not until it. But
do you see my point?
If we're going to talk about protecting lives, that's a larger issue in America than guns is. If we're talking about individual lives of ways that they can be protected, loss of life in America, there's loss of life through fentanyl. There's loss of life through obesity. The obesity crisis in America costs 6 times the number of lives as guns.
Right, and so, you're the guy saying, you know what would help this? Ice cream.
No.
Kind of saying that. Moreover, bringing up obesity, which has nothing to do with immigration, is strange because the topic and the question that John posed was about his policies of immigration. And so he's kind of deliberately trying to downplay the gun crisis by comparing it to other crises. At least that's what it seems like. Or maybe he did it unintentionally because he couldn't keep track of the conversation. I'm not sure which one it is, but that's what it seems like to me.
So, you know what would help the problem that we're facing with firearms?
What?
The fatherlessness crisis that we have in America. If you look at the statistics.
Right. Yeah, they're dying from gun deaths.
80% of school shooters either came from a broken or fatherless home.
So you would say no guns for fatherless homes?
No, that's not what I would say. I would say that fathers need to be more engaged.
Great.
All right, so that doesn't address what the valid point that some of these homes that are fatherless because these fathers are dying from gun deaths in the first place. And so if you reduce gun deaths, you would help with the fatherlessness crisis a lot. It's not a direct causation. They are more like gun deaths lead to fatherlessness, and fatherlessness might lead to gun deaths. Let's see what else they have to say.
So let's
crime with a firearm if they don't have a father in the home.
Let's put more resources into areas that are poverty-stricken. All for it.
And into fatherlessness, and that's something that we're doing.
But why with guns?
All right, so this is the first moment where they actually agree on a stance. Both of them agreed on. So that's great.
Are you against bringing order?
I'm not against bringing order.
You are. You're also making it less safe for cops and for people. When the police go to a...
Okay, so before we get on to this topic, it's sad to say that there is an article by Kevin Schaefer, a professor of sociology at Brigham Young University, who said that there is no sufficient evidence to claim that fatherlessness has led to more gun violence. But there is a caveat. He also said that there hasn't been it hasn't been possible to actually collect data because of the Dickey Amendment, but CDC did gain the right to actually research the causes of gun violence in 2018. But there is another caveat that even though CDC would have collected the data since 2018, that data is not sufficient to actually have a good model that supports correlation or even causation. It's just not enough data. But still, the main issue here is that he's moving the conversation from the cause that was being actively discussed to a different cause. Like both fatherlessness and guns cause gun deaths. They're not mutually exclusive. You can work on both of those issues.
Domestic call, it's the most dangerous call they can go on. In your world, If they knew that there were firearms in the house, that's a safer call.
I'm going to go back a little bit. So over here, he talks about how the senator wants to bring order in the fentanyl, obesity, and fatherlessness crises, but does not want to bring order for the gun crises. But the issue over here is that they don't have a shared vision of a societal order, so they'll never agree on any of the points of order. And from a factual perspective, the removal of gun regulations does bring chaos from just any kind of modeling and historical data that you can come up with, at least related to guns.
Is that what you're saying?
No, because police...
Because why?
Because police treat every situation as a potential...
But more guns makes us safer. So why don't, when the police go to a house filled with guns, why don't they breathe a sigh of relief knowing that this Second Amendment that shall not be infringed is being exercised so fruitfully in this home?
Are you familiar with the 39-year-old woman in New Jersey?
I'm familiar with a ton of anecdotes.
Yeah,
I'm asking you a simple question.
This is not an anecdote,
When
John.
the police
This actually happened.
go to a house...
She had a restraining order on her ex-boyfriend
I
of
can
an
run
individual.
through...
So that is an anecdote. They're defined as stories of true events, not just fictional. That's like more like a semantic disagreement. But the main issue is that he did not answer the question directly. He instead tried to use an anecdote to deflect answering the question.
I know, we can both run through
Hundreds
that.
and hundreds of examples of women killed by their domestic partners by guns that were not taken away through the lessening of red flag laws. You're pivoting to anecdotes.
No,
Good call out by John over here.
this is not anecdotes.
What the police say, if we had gun registration, if we were able to track purchases, they have a technology that every bullet would be stamped with an individual like a fingerprint. If we had an ATF that wasn't defunded, we would be able to enforce gun laws more effectively, and we would be able to solve gun crimes more effectively. You're against all of that.
Because the person is the threat, not the firearm, not the knife.
I get it.
The person and the individual is the one that is the concern
Great,
here.
but you don't want anything that could help law enforcement or society determine whether or not a person is a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun.
Most even
the
law
registry
enforcement
would allow you to have much more effective background checks. So I don't understand why you won't just admit that you are making it harder for police to manage the streets by allowing all of these guns to go out without permits, without checks, and without background stuff. Why is that hard? Why can't you just stand by that?
Because that's not what I'm doing. I'm defending the individual's right to keep and bear arms.
That's a different...
That is a different argument. Like, the question is asking about the lack of legal freedom for cops to manage the gun crisis effectively. This does not address the central argument, and he's kind of going back to his, I guess, tactic of defense, where you can just repeat the same thing over and over again without addressing the actual question in the conversation. But if he keeps doing this, we're getting nowhere.
For an argument.
Okay, but
you
we
may
keep
do.
trying-
Here's what I'm saying. You want to say I'm a Second Amendment purist and I'm making it safer. You're not. You're making it more chaotic, and that's not a matter of opinion. That's the truth.
That is a matter of opinion, John.
But why take away their tools?
Because certain
Again, over here, opinion and fact, truth. The lack of mutual agreement on the vision of order makes it harder to confirm what is an opinion and a fact. Like, they're not going to agree on it.
of their tools that they're using would be infringements upon the people's right to keep and bear arms, upon their constitutional rights, upon due
So you're
process,
saying
upon other things.
that registering is an infringement?
Yes,
Okay. Is voting a right?
it's a right for citizens, yes.
Do you have to do anything to do it?
Yes,
What do you have to do?
it depends on the state.
What do you have to do?
Sometimes you have to be at least 18 years old,
What do you have to do?
and in
going.
some places you have to have a government-issued ID.
What do you have to? You have to
You have to be on the voter rolls.
register. register.
That was pretty hard for him to get to see that. Good job, Jon.
So you have to register to a right. Is that an infringement?
Does the right to voting say shall not be infringed?
Oh, so this is just a semantic argument now.
No, it's not.
You
That was a good call out on the exact argumentation tactic that he was trying to use.
believe voting rights can be infringed because it doesn't say specifically shall not be infringed.
Is it an infringement upon a 17-year-old's right to vote, since they don't have that right to vote?
No.
Oh, it's not.
I don't even know what point he was trying to make over here. Like, if they don't have the right to vote in the first place, how can it be an infringement? It doesn't, I don't think the question makes sense.
Infringement on them?
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
Because you're the one making the argument, not me. I'm saying even rights have responsibilities, and that within those responsibilities are responsibilities and order. Otherwise, it's chaotic. I'll go you one further. You want to ban drag show readings to children.
To minors, yes.
Why?
Why?
What are you protecting?
Why can we prohibit children from voting, those under 18 from voting?
Why are you
but
banning?
Also that
Is that free speech? Are you infringing on that performer's free speech?
they can continue to exercise their free speech, just not in front of a child.
Why?
Because the government does have a responsibility to protect.
I'm sorry?
The government does have.
Even rights have responsibilities, and these responsibilities bring order. And Jon got him to say responsibility.
Responsibility in certain instances to
What's
protect
the
children.
leading cause of death amongst children in this country? And I'm going to give you a hint. It's not drag show readings to children.
Correct, yes.
So what is it?
I'm presuming you're going to say it's firearms.
No, I'm not going to say it like it's an opinion. That's what it is. It's firearms.
And you can see it in this chart over here that shows that over time, firearms have become the leading cause of death for children.
More than cancer, more than car accidents. And what you're telling me is you don't mind infringing free speech to protect children from this amorphous thing that you think of. But when it comes to children that have died, you don't give a flying fuck to stop that because that shall not be infringed. That is hypocrisy at its highest order.
All right, so that was a great call out. That is indeed hypocrisy at its highest order. Though, what I'm kind of thinking of now is, these are just my additional thoughts. Hypocrisy is not something a politician is really afraid of, right? Like, they have their own motives for driving their actions, and they're willing to be hypocrites for the sake of their goals, no matter how many people die. Like, we know that most of the people who are pro-gun in the political system of America are lobbied by the NRA and weapons manufacturing industry. And it's openly shown, like, all the evidence of how the donations affect their political decisions, right? And so we already know that they have their own motives for doing that. And it might not be just financial, right? Like, it could be cultural, societal, all kinds of different motives. But none of those motives are in public interest. So most politicians are pretty hypocritical. And so I would like to actually get this conversation further, take it further out of the context of just this interview, but to also how it was covered. Like, one of the most popular titles that I saw for this interview was Jon Stewart breaks the internet, demolishing Republican to his face. Must see, Jon Stewart demolishes pro-gun Republican in takedown of the year. It's kind of clickbait headline, just propagates dunking culture, which is like exacerbating the political division in America even more. And so this kind of clickbait titles are kind of ironic given the content of the video, as the content of the video is like actually trying to solve problems and expose the truth of the thought process of Senator Dahm. But these titles are harming the country for the sake of profit, just like what Senator Dahm is doing with his decisions about gun regulations. Some more further additional thoughts. Facts don't change minds, incentives do. In fact, facts and rational discussion can lead to the backfire effect, which makes people more attached to their beliefs. And so, what my suggestion is that when you are talking to someone who is on a different side from you, don't try to always bring in facts and rational discussion. Don't like call them out on that, like everything that Jon did on calling him out on whether something was a fact or not, regardless of whether it's a fact or not, regardless of whether it's true or not, there is a psychological effect that happens that makes the other person more attached to their beliefs. And so what you have to do is you have to get them to discover the truth of the matter and get them to discover why the facts are facts by questioning and exploring and discussing for mutual understanding and truth. This is why the goal of this channel, Compassionate Communication, is to aim for mutual understanding, aim for truth, and aim for a better future. Let's keep going. So I was kind of wondering what Jon's motive was, right, in this interview. Was he trying to expose the senator's hypocrisy, exposing that the senator does not truly care about the deaths of children who were killed by guns, exposing that politicians don't truly care about the people? Aren't these things that people already know? Like, it can be quite entertaining for the anti-gun side to watch this, but will this actually help the political division or worsen it? I'm not sure. Discuss in the comment section. I like to read. And one of the issues with heated discussions is usually a disagreement on facts and truth. A lot of the people who have the power to make decisions for millions of people don't actually care about truth as long as their goals are achieved. So it's hard to have serious discussions on serious topics when we don't agree on facts and truth. So yeah, again, what does this actually accomplish? I'm curious because Senator Dahm is never going to admit his mistakes. Like, no amount of gun deaths would matter for him to do that, because the moment he admits his mistakes, it will make the Republican Party look really bad, and that could be the end of his political career, social status, and income. Kind of an end of his life, almost, right? So I don't think there'll ever be a change from what he's going to do because of all the things that he has to lose if he does that. And so what I'd like journalists to discuss is to address the people and platforms who influence votes with propaganda and disinformation, like, Facebook and Twitter, all of these different platforms, and all the people who are spreading disinformation. We need to actually expose them and try to bring out the truth in open. The second thing they need to discuss is the fact that we no longer care about finding out the truth, that we just talk about our beliefs and we're just using our confirmation bias in all conversations without actually trying to understand the other side and coming to a mutual understanding, having discussions that go towards the truth rather than just fighting and arguing, going in circles with the same arguments over and over again. It's such a waste of your time. You live for such a limited amount of time in your life. It would be better if you spent it by having mutual understanding and trying to actually progress towards the truth. But there is a caveat. It's kind of ridiculous to expect this from journalists because they have vested interests, since they can only talk about what will not get them fired from their broadcasting organization. So their whole career kind of depends on this. And this is why I think comedians, YouTubers, and people from other professions without vested interests can actually discuss the facts more freely than mainstream journalists. And so sometimes it's actually better to look for people from other professions without vested interests who are serious about the topics and really want to change them, because those are the ones who will go look for the truth. So how can we actually make it so that we understand both sides of an issue better? You see, everyone has to understand that the side that they disagree with did not go through all the experiences in their life that you did. Like, for example, if you're anti-gun, you have to understand that the people who are on the pro-gun side have went through a completely different past, completely different experiences in their lives, right? Our thoughts and beliefs are products of all the experiences in our past. Thus, we actually need a deep exploration into the nature of beliefs to have a meaningful conversation that actually helps progress mutual understanding and fix the problem in reality. You know, truth and prioritizing truth is the only way we can actually solve these problems, because then we are acting based on reality and not our beliefs. And so my recommendation for actually having a kind of neutral understanding of both sides is the coverage by Andrew Callahan on Channel 5 in the video NRA Conference. It's going to be both sides that are represented, and there's not going to be a lot of bias in it. So I highly recommend checking it out. I'll be putting a link to that in the description that you can watch now. And thank you for watching.